Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 7. My guest today is Leah, an all-around awesome person who lives in Vancouver and has been through so much physically, medically, and emotionally on her infertility journey. And through it all, she has been so strong and so resilient. Her story kept blowing me away at every turn. I'd be like, and then that was good? And she was like, no. I'm like, what? So it was just, she's had an incredible ride. And the thing that I really love most about her is that she hasn't given up. She said this quote that I want to repeat, which was, she said, the theme in the last year and a half has been, there have been all these setbacks, but then these miracle moments where things aligned, where it was a clear sign for me, don't give up, keep going. And I love that she said that, and I love that she shared her story with us. So I hope you enjoy it. And I also want to thank our mutual friend, Amanda, who introduced us. So Mandy, I love you. You're wicked smart. And without further ado, this is Leah's infertility story. Hi, Leah. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for inviting me and having me.
Yes. So we'll just kind of start back in the beginning. Growing up, did you always want to have kids and be a mom?
Yeah, I think I did naturally. I mean, when I had a vision for my life, it included a family and kids. I don't know that I ever was like, I definitely want a certain number, but I knew that I wanted to be a mother at some point. And growing up, I also knew that I had other priorities too, of a career and travel. So I knew instinctively that being a mother would happen later in my life, but it was something I always wanted to have as an experience.
Mm-hmm. And where did you grow up?
I grew up Vancouver, Canada, and then I also spent probably about 7 years living in the US as part of my job. And then I spent 4 years living in Germany. So spent years living in different places, but I'm from Vancouver, Canada.
Okay, excellent. So tell me what happened when was the time that you decided, okay, I'm going to start to try to have a family? Were you in a relationship? Tell me, we don't know each other, so I don't know much about your background. So fill in the blanks, please.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. My husband and I, we've known each other since the 8th grade. We went to the same high school.
So did my husband and I.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I would have never thought that we were going to get married. But yeah, so we've always been friends.
Did you guys date in 8th grade or you were just friends?
No. We were just, sometimes we were friends. We knew of each other in high school. And then we actually probably became more friends in university. So he dated a roommate of mine in college. Like I had set them up. So it was kind of funny, but we've always just stayed in contact. And then when I was living in Germany, actually, he randomly emailed me and we ended up connecting. We hadn't seen each other for quite a few years. And I just remember that time, like seeing each other and connecting, there was definitely an entirely different types of feelings there that neither of us had ever felt. And so we started dating when I was around, I think 26, 25. And then I moved to the US. He was living in Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we were going between Costa Rica and at the time I was living in New York. So we were going back and forth.
Wow.
So
okay.
Yeah, it was getting a little, I think, crazy. And there was an expiry date of how much longer we could do that. It was really fun at first, of course.
Sure.
I felt like we were living the best life of Costa Rica and New York City. But so in 2013, we both decided, okay, let's move home, which was Vancouver. We got engaged and then we got married in 2014. And as soon as we got married, I was turning 35. He was as well. So we're the same year. So we knew like, okay, it's time to start trying to have kids. So that's when we knew that was the time.
Okay. So you guys kind of started to try right away after you got married?
Yes, we started to try right away. I think, I don't know, there was something always inside of me that I don't know if it was, I guess it was instinct. I just didn't believe that we were going to have an easy path from the beginning. And I don't know where that came from. It was just this, I don't know, this gut feeling. So I actually, right after we got married, interestingly enough, I went to the doctor, and to be honest, I lied. And I said that my husband and I had been trying for a year.
Okay.
Because I knew that we had to say we had been trying for a certain amount of time for them to like take me seriously and to start going through all these tests and all the exams, especially like in Canada, it's such a different healthcare system.
Okay.
So I said that we had been trying for a year. We weren't having any success, and I wanted to see a fertility specialist.
Wow.
So yeah. And sure enough, we found out pretty quickly that both of my fallopian tubes were blocked.
Oh, wow. Okay. So just backing up a little bit, you said you didn't really know why you felt like you might have a long path. Was there anything with your mom or anybody else in your family? Like, did anybody else have struggles with fertility or infertility?
No,
Okay.
like nothing. I don't know. I think it was just something I knew. I think I also knew like, okay, I'm 35. You know, I knew I was pushing the age limit and had prioritized my career. So there was no reason for me to think that. It just was like an instinct.
Wow. That's such a cool testament to listening to your gut instinct and listening to your body. You know,
yeah, it was interesting for sure. And through that, I met an amazing fertility doctor here in Vancouver, Dr. Usby. And yeah, so I did go through a surgery, and they were able to unblock my tubes. And that's when I actually got pregnant, literally like the month after, with my son now, Jacob.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a miracle. And I mean, what I've recently experienced now, around 2 with infertility, it's nothing in comparison. But I remember at the time it was so stressful, and just even hearing like your fallopian tubes are blocked, and right. It was just, yeah, it was an interesting experience. And I'm very grateful that I was one of the cases that it was successful, that they were able to unblock them, and I was able to get pregnant naturally after.
Right.
At first they thought it was just one. And actually what I was told is a lot of women might just have one blocked and they never know it, because they can get pregnant because from the other side, the egg will drop from the other side, and it's actually quite common. But I wasn't getting pregnant. And then actually after they looked into it more, they actually uncovered that both of them were blocked. Okay. So there was no way I was going to get pregnant. The procedure is not very, it's not that bad. It basically went in that the day and left the same day. I was sedated, and they just go through your cervix. Obviously it's very, like a specialist has to do it, and they go into your tubes and remove if it's scar tissue or whatever kind of blockage. And it's a very unknown reason. There's multiple reasons why that could happen. They say sometimes previous miscarriages, which I hadn't had, can cause it. There's a lot of like, it can be age. I mean, there was just like a list of things, and they didn't really know why that had happened to me. And also I have heard that women have gone through the procedure and it's not always successful. So usually if it's not successful, then the next step would be IVF. But in my case, it was successful.
Okay. So then you said that you were able to get pregnant right away. And how old is your son now?
He's just over 3. He turned 3 in January. His name's Jacob. Yeah, it was a pretty easy pregnancy. Labor was a little bit different, and ended up having an emergency C-section. But all around, it was a good experience.
Okay. I have a 3-year-old boy as well. So I know what camp you're in right now, and I know what you mean.
It's wild.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So then moving on with your story, what happened after that? How long before you guys started to try again?
Yeah, I think Jacob he was about to turn 2. And my husband and I decided, okay, we were ready to have another child. And so and of course I was a little bit worried, because I had also heard from my fertility doctor that your tubes can always block again. So just because they're unblocked doesn't mean they'll stay that way. Mm-hmm. So I luckily went straight back to my fertility doctor and said, okay, we're wanting to try again. Can we do an exam just to make sure that my tubes have stayed open and they're not blocked. And so they were able to do that, and everything looked really great. And we got pregnant immediately on our first try of trying number 2. So that was August 2017. I got pregnant, and then I had a miscarriage in October.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's interesting. I feel like that was the beginning of this wild journey of just being educated and taught so many life lessons. I had never had a miscarriage before. As of today, it's actually the only miscarriage I've had. My infertility has been around other things, but not not having repeated miscarriages. And I just knew so little about what it meant to miscarry. I had this idea, or what I heard was that I would know if I was having a miscarriage. I would have cramping, or I would bleed, so I just thought everything was going as planned with that pregnancy, and learned quickly that that wasn't necessarily the case.
Because what happened? You went in for a checkup and they couldn't find a heartbeat, or how did you figure it out?
Exactly that. Yeah. So,
oh God, I'm so sorry. That is the worst. I've talked to so many women now, and that I think that is universally regarded as just one of the most gut-wrenching moments in a pregnancy, when there's no heartbeat. So I'm so sorry that you went through that.
Yeah. And I think, I was just so unprepared. And I don't know how I would have prepared for it, but I just was so naive to it. Like, my husband was like, "Do you want me to come for this ultrasound?" And I was just like, "No, it's fine. I'll go. Don't worry." Like, it's just to hear the heartbeat. Like, now looking back, I'm like, why didn't I have him come with me? I just thought it was so routine.
Right.
And I didn't even think that there would be anything wrong, because I felt like I would have had symptoms if something was wrong.
Just 2 quick questions. Had you heard the heartbeat before, or was that the first time? Okay. And how far along were you?
I was 9 weeks.
Okay.
Almost 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember going in, and the technician even asking me, like, "Have you had any bleeding or cramping?" I'm like, no, like, just feeling so confident. And then I knew right away there was as soon as I could just tell her face, her expression.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was like, this is very different than the first ultrasound with my first pregnancy. Like, I just remember them right away, like, smiling and showing me the screen. Like, she wasn't showing me anything. And she was like, "I just need to go talk to the doctor and I'll come back." And I just remember laying there and being like, oh my God, something is not right.
Oh, God.
And I'm here by myself. I didn't have my husband come. So anyways, I just asked, she came back. I said, "Is everything okay?" And she said, "Your doctor will call you." And I was like, it was just the worst experience.
Your doctor will call you? Like, you had to leave?
Yeah. Like, I had to leave. No.
Oh my God, Leah.
I know. It was like the worst. To this day, I won't go back to that place, obviously. But it was the worst. It was just the worst experience. And I went home and I just looked at my husband and I just started bawling. And I was like, something's wrong. And he was like, of course, I tend to be a worrier, and he tends to be the optimistic and optimist and everything. So he was like, "I'm sure you're just worried about it's going to be fine." And I was like, no, definitely it's not fine. And so, the next morning I got the call from my doctor and my midwife letting me know that there was no heartbeat and that something had gone wrong.
Wait, hold up. Why did you have to wait so long? That's torture.
Oh, it was torture. Yeah, I had it in the evening and they called me in the morning.
No, that's not right.
I had to go through that night.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
It was terrible.
Do you know why they didn't just tell you right then and there? I mean, maybe the doctor wasn't there or something and they wanted
it wasn't my doctor that was there. So they wanted to connect with my doctor. So, and then I also had a midwife. So it was just like a logistical complication that ended up being a really terrible experience.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And it definitely has impacted how I approach every ultrasound now. My husband comes to every single one with me.
Yeah.
So I found out the next morning that something had gone wrong at about 7.5 weeks.
Okay.
And that was the big aha moment or learning of oh, okay, a miscarriage can look like this too. It doesn't just look like cramping or bleeding.
Right.
Women, and even when I started to talk to some of my close friends, sharing what had happened, I was just so shocked of like, oh yeah, that happened to me too. And I was like, what do you mean that happened to you? Like, how did you not tell me that happened? Like, when did that happen to you? I was just so shocked that I had some close friends that, ended up telling me that they experienced the same thing, yet I had never heard of that, or they had never shared that with me.
Why do you think women have such a hard time, like, bringing it up in the open?
Yeah, I think I've even asking myself these questions of like when I have found myself more open about my story or when I haven't. And I think for me personally, there has been moments of feeling like I failed, or my body didn't do what it's meant to do, or like there's a malfunction in my body.
Like something's wrong with you.
Something's wrong with me. And then I think as women too, or it might be me, like I also have this thing of like, I don't want people to pity me. I don't want people to feel sorry for me.
Yeah.
And I think that has also been a little bit of a struggle for me in sharing my story, or getting to this place of like which I am, and I'm so happy to be here. But I think there's been moments where I didn't want people to look at me differently or feel bad for me. So, I think it's a combination of so many different feelings and emotions that as women, we don't really open up to each other about it.
And sometimes it's almost easier just to not even bring it up. Tell me what happened after that.
Yeah. So after that, I was told, here are your options. You can wait a few days to see if you'll miscarry naturally and you'll start to cramp and bleed. And that's, I guess, ideal case. Or we can give you medication to actually make that happen faster. Or you can go through a D&C procedure where we'll go in and remove the fetus. So again, I was just like, oh my gosh, so much information. And I think I spent the weekend connecting with really close friends, and just anyone that I even knew had a miscarriage or any infertility, because I just found it so hard to find information or a support network. So I started to ask some close friends, like, what did you do? What decision did you go with? And so I did wait a few days and nothing had happened. I was starting to feel like I couldn't even process or move on, knowing I was still carrying this pregnancy, but wasn't, alive. And ultimately, and I also had this okay, I have to travel in 5 days for work. What should I do here? And I ultimately decided to have a D&C and went in for that procedure, and everything went really, really smooth. It's not a complicated procedure, and then I went in the morning and left a few hours later. I was sedated. I took a couple of days off of work, but overall felt fine and didn't really have any complications immediately from that procedure. And I felt like I was okay, able to move on. And this is where everything started to unravel for me. In that I remember the handout they gave me, it said you should menstruate within 3 to 6 weeks of having a D&C. And so 6 weeks passed by and I still hadn't gotten a period. And I thought, this is kind of weird. I wonder why, but again, maybe 3 to 6 weeks is a range. I'll wait another week or so. Still nothing. And so I went to my general practitioner and basically told him I had a miscarriage. I had a D&C 7 weeks ago. I still haven't had a period. And I just knew, I knew something wasn't right. And he looked at me and said, everyone's different. It's probably hormonal. go take a cup, like, just don't worry about it. I remember him just being like, just relax about it. It's not a big deal. Take a couple weeks. And then if you still don't have anything, come back to me.
Mm.
So that definitely doesn't align with my personality of just taking things like easy and not worrying about it. I was like, clearly you don't know me and you're probably not going to be my doctor after this.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. Goodbye. But that wasn't
that thing of like when someone tells you to relax and it's the opposite of what you need to hear and the opposite of what you're going to do. Like, how can I fucking relax right now? You knew again that something was wrong or something was off, right? It was that intuition that like you'd had before.
I knew, like, I definitely knew something was wrong. So I went home, and I mean, every doctor will probably tell you not to do this, but I did. I Googled everything and anything. And I quickly came up on a couple people talking online about Asherman syndrome. And I remember where I was sitting in my living room reading about it, the symptoms, what it was. And like my whole heart, like my body, everything just like stopped. And I just knew, I was like, oh my God, I have Asherman syndrome.
Wow. Had you ever heard of it before?
No.
Okay.
Never in my life.
Like, besides not getting your period after the DNC, were there any other symptoms that you aligned with?
No, I mean, there was the lineup of like, getting a DNC, not getting your period, but still starting to get symptoms. Like I had some symptoms of having a period, but I wasn't actually like bleeding.
Okay.
And then there's different spectrums of Asherman. Some women do menstruate, but like they aren't able to get pregnant. But I just knew, like, with the couple of things lining up, there was something inside me where I was like, I have Asherman's. And when you look it up, it's like the first thing it says is like, it's very uncommon. It's extremely rare. But there was just something inside me that I knew that that's what I had.
Wow. So then did you go back to find a different doctor, or did you go to your OB?
Well, I went back to him and I just said, like, this is what I have. And he thought I was crazy. I mean, and you know, I'm not blaming him because like Asherman's is extremely rare. So, you know, he's doing his job, he's taking the data, and he's like, there's a very small chance she has it, but he also wasn't listening to me. So I just demanded in that moment, I said, I need you to refer me to a specialist. I want to see my fertility specialist immediately. Like, I'm not leaving here without these referrals.
Good for you to self-advocate. You know, that's what we have to do now.
That's what I feel like has been definitely a big part of my journey over the last year and a half, has been just being an advocate for myself and knowing my body and what has been the right thing. So from there, that is when I started to have pretty serious appointments and meetings. Again, my fertility doctor, Dr. Usby, is amazing, and I'm just so glad that I have had him in my life. He's the one also that took care of me when I had my tubes blocked. So immediately when I went to see him and I told him my story, again, because Asherman's is so rare, the doctors needed to go through a process of elimination. So I went through probably a couple months of them looking at my hormone levels, which were completely off. Then they found a cyst on my ovary, which then they were concerned about maybe that was causing me not to menstruate. So it was a couple months of every week, a different test exam, being on different hormones. And then finally, they gave me a hormone that I would take for 10 days, and it would basically put me into having my period at the end of it.
Okay.
And I knew when they gave me this that it was like, if I didn't get my period at the end of this was going to be the like sign that I had Asherman's.
Okay.
So I took it for 10 days. And after 10 days, I got all the symptoms of a period. So cramping, I was sweating in my sleep. But I never actually menstruated. There was no blood.
Wow. Okay.
So I remember just like being in my bedroom bawling. It was like the moment where everything I had thought had become a reality. And I called my doctor and he asked me to come in, and they immediately did a hysteroscopy where they go through your cervix to get into your uterus. And in that moment, they confirmed I had Asherman's. They couldn't even fully get through my cervix.
Mm-hmm.
So they couldn't even get into my uterus.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what is Asherman's? Like, what does it do to your body? What does it mean that's happening inside your body?
Yeah, it's a buildup of scar tissue. And that can happen in any women's like uterus. It can happen in the top of it, the bottom of it, throughout the entire uterus. It's usually from some kind of trauma, which could be like a D&C, or it could be because of, I know some women end up with it after an emergency C-section, or there's some type of infection. Again, it's very rare and uncommon. Like some doctors, when you say Asherman, like they don't even know what you're talking about. But yeah, it's basically scar tissue that's built up in your uterus. So in my case, the words they used was cement-like.
Oh God.
That they couldn't even get into my uterus. Some women have it at the top of their uterus, so they can actually get pregnant. The sperm can get into their uterus and they actually menstruate, but they can't retain a pregnancy because as the pregnancy continues, the scar tissue gets in the way.
Okay.
Whereas my case, it was so thick and it was actually like at the very bottom, starting like at my cervix, that not even like a drop, like that's how thick it was throughout, of blood would come through when I was actually menstruating. And of course, could not even get pregnant. There's no way a sperm is going to get through there.
Mm-hmm. So was it causing you other health issues or symptoms? Like, were you in pain at this point? Or so was it like your body had been trying to have its period and there was a buildup of blood?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a lot of risk because then your body is still menstruating and then it has to exit the blood somehow. So then it starts to go through your fallopian tubes and your other organs.
Oh my God.
It's not safe to have this condition for a long period of time. And even if I didn't want to have more children, it still needed to be treated because I couldn't keep going menstruating monthly, but actually the blood having to exit other ways throughout my body.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned in your email to me that your case was a rare 1%. Like, and so that's what they told you as your diagnosis?
Yeah. So the with my issue, the reason it was so rare is because it was at the very bottom, or as soon as you try to enter the cervix. So they couldn't even get, like a lot of women that have it, it's more in the middle or the top. So they can actually even get a camera in there to even look around to see where it is. They couldn't even get in at all. And some women, and majority of women, do still menstruate a little bit because it's not, I guess, cement-like or throughout the uterus. So mine was just very rare. And then the added element, which, I mean, now I look back, I believe where the complication came from in my D&C is that a lot of women do have a tilted uterus. But what we uncovered through this procedure, and as I went through this journey of MRIs and all these things, is that my uterus is tilted so severely, it's almost at a 90-degree angle.
Oh, wow.
So not only did I have this scar tissue that had built up, it was in an extremely challenging angle position for any doctor to like see or even able to remove.
Okay. So what did they do? You said you quickly had a team of specialists and surgeons like working on your case. So tell me about all of that. And also, what were you freaking out? I mean, it must have been so scary.
Oh, I was freaking out. I feel like I was having like out of body experiences. I had to like remind myself like this is like actually happening to me. I remember even sharing, with some close friends what was happening. And I just remember being like, oh my God, like the story I'm telling right now is my story. Like this isn't a story I heard through a friend.
Right.
And there were so many different twists and turns throughout it. But once they had diagnosed it and said, yes, you have Asherman's, I remember it was a Friday, and I went home, and again, I get crazy about things and became this like research mad woman. And I literally researched everything there was possible on Asherman's and infertility. Like literally it got to the point where there was nothing that I hadn't read online or an article about it. And I had found this common theme that there was a doctor by the name of Dr. Charles March in Pasadena, California, who was recognized as the best doctor in North America, if not the world, for treating and understanding what Asherman syndrome was. And I thought to myself, like, I'm already in a situation where like this case is rare and I want to have more children. Everything I read was, there was a good chance that we were not going to be able to, like that IVF wasn't even going to be a possibility for us. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to give us the best shot possible. So over that weekend, I emailed Dr. Charles March. I found some way to email him, and I called his clinic. I left probably a 20-minute long message.
Good for you.
Like pleading my case and saying, I'm Canadian. I don't have US insurance. I'll come and give you money. Like, please, will you just talk to me and see me? He probably thought I was crazy. But, and on the Monday morning, my fertility doctor called me and to talk about the results and what we were going to do. And it was so funny. He said, you can stay here in Canada and we'll find someone to like look at this and treat it. And I have a really good friend in California. And I interrupted and I said, Dr. Charles March.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, yes. And I was like, I like started crying.
Good. Yes.
I was like, okay, like, and this is the theme I feel like through the last year and a half is there's just been these setbacks, but then these like miracle moments where things aligned, where it was a clear sign for me of like, you don't give up, keep going.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it was a good friend of his. And he said, I'll get on the phone with him. And long story short, after conference calls, my husband and I were on a flight to California.
Wow. Was he like, oh yeah, I heard that girl's message over the weekend?
Yeah. He was like, oh, I already know. I think he called him and was like, oh, I already know who you're talking about. She's already called me and emailed me. She won't leave me alone.
Oh my God. You know what though? It's so good that you did that. And I think if nothing else, it's just like a great lesson for people listening. Like you really do have to advocate for yourself and do the research and, do the work, because there's so many different roads that these things can go down, and you sometimes know what's best for you and what you need. So I'm so glad you connected with him. That's insane.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I agree. You really have to take a lot of things into your own hands and be that advocate. And so yeah, we were on a flight, my husband and I, we felt like this, he's the best. We need to see him. And we met with him the day before the surgery. He did a couple exams and ultrasound. He felt really positive and optimistic. And so I went into the surgery, and I just went in like, this is the best doctor in the world. And like
doing it himself.
Yeah, he's doing it himself.
Wait, what happened when you actually met him? I'm picturing you like,
I like
his arms.
Yeah, like I loved him. He was like, I don't know, my grandfather. Yeah. Like I was just like, oh my God. Yeah, and he's such a lovely man and so great. He sat down with us, and my husband and him talked about golf and fishing, and like I was just like, this is part of the journey. He's like our guy. This is right. Like, it felt so right. Yeah. So we went, the next morning, showed up. I was put under. And I guess my husband, obviously, I feel so lucky to have him. And man, the amount of waiting rooms he has been in the last 2 years, I just can't believe how much stress he's had.
I want to touch on that. Like how is this affecting your relationship with him all throughout? Because you guys had so many ups and downs and twists and turns.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was either going to like make us or break us.
Mm-hmm.
And there were moments it broke us. I mean, I think, I get emotional about it.
No, I get it.
But I feel like we have seen each other like at our best. And he's probably seen me more at my worst, like darkest moments, like hands and knees, crying, asking him to take Jacob out of the house because I just needed a moment and I didn't want my son to see me like that. So I'm so grateful for him, but it definitely, in the end, it brought us so much closer. We had to have such real conversations about life and our goals and my health. And, as we went through more surgeries and procedures, it was like, what's at stake here? And, because
at one point,
it hasn't been easy.
I might be projecting a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at one point it was probably like, we just want to make sure that you're healthy. It's not even about having another kid, right? It's like, this is a health risk for you. So you need to figure it out. So that's adding another whole layer of scariness and complications to this whole thing.
Yeah. I mean,
now you made me cry.
Yeah, I mean,
that's you like on your hands and knees. I've been in that position where you're just like, oh God, what's next? And trying to keep, because I had a daughter too when I was going through my infertility, and just asking my husband, I just need her. I don't want her to see me like this. So I really can connect with what you just said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was
regroup.
Definitely some hard moments, and then some really joyful moments. But
the surgery went well?
So that was one of the hardest moments that neither of us expected. So my husband obviously knew something wasn't going right, because we were told it would be about a 30-minute surgery, and I think he said once 45 minutes passed an hour and he was waiting in the waiting room, he was like, something's wrong, like something's not going right. And so this is obviously all what I hear because I was under, but Dr. March came out to the waiting room, and my husband just said he was just shaking his head, and he said, "I'm so sorry, but it was unsuccessful."
Oh.
And I think Greg was just like, "What? Like, what do you mean it was unsuccessful?"
Yeah.
And Dr. March is like, "I've probably performed close to 3,000 surgeries, and there's only 6 that I have not been able to do successfully, and your wife is the 7th."
Oh.
And I woke up, and Dr. March was there, and he basically shared the same thing. I was so drugged up, and and being like, "What? Like, you're the best, like,
you're Dr. March."
Yeah. Like, how is this possible? And then I remember him saying, like, "It's okay. I'm going to find a way." He's like, "I'm going to find a way. This is not the end of the road. Okay. It's just that this isn't the way we're going to achieve it."
Yeah.
And I fell back asleep. Anyways, a few hours later, we left. I was staying with friends in California. It was devastating. We went home, and I was like, oh my God, I'm still broken. Like, I felt like I just went through this whole thing and nothing has been fixed or corrected. Right. So the next morning consisted, again, conference calls with Dr. March and then my fertility doctor here. And they're just like so amazing. And, he immediately was like, here's what basically what he said was, what the problem was, again, is where the scar tissue was, how thick it was, and the angle of my uterus was just like all these things were stacking up against it being like unsuccessful and it being such a rare case. So he had shared that the next option was like a full abdominal surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And so my husband and I flew back to Canada, and we spent the next 2 weeks with conference calls between our doctor here and Dr. March in LA. And long story short, Dr. March had offered to do the surgery for free.
Whoa.
Yeah. My husband and I'll never forget that conference call because I remember saying to him, like, I'm not insured in the US. Like, how am I going to afford abdominal? Like, basically they'd have to open me up and open up my uterus abdominally to then remove the scar tissue.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being like, this is going to be crazy. How are we going to afford this? We have to pay out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically said, like, look, I just want you to like have the child that you're meant to have. And I feel responsible that like I haven't been able to solve this, and I'm willing to do this surgery for you for free.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah. It was like, again, it was like another sign of like, keep going. Because trust me, before this, I was like, oh my God, is the most like experienced doctor in the world just was like unsuccessful. Like, is this a sign to stop?
And it makes you realize like there are good doctors in the world. There are good people. And that's just one of those moments where you're like, okay, he's as invested as you guys are at this point, probably emotionally and, wanting to make it successful. So that's so great.
Yeah. So it was amazing. And with that, because it didn't mean that the hospital fees were still going to be there. And then we had to get into real conversation about like his services, and the other surgeon were going to be complimentary. But once you get into full abdominal surgery, there's a lot of complications that could happen. Mm. And so now I would be in another country, uninsured, having an abdominal surgery with a doctor that has done this a handful of times and very experienced. But again, there was a lot of risk around it. And so he worked with my fertility doctor here in Vancouver to see if there was anyone that they felt comfortable that could actually take on this surgery and had enough experience and knowledge in this area where I could have it done in Vancouver and really remove a lot of that risk. However, Dr. March would be very close and have conference calls and consult through the whole process.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So we ended up getting connected, and kind of my case got accepted by the chief of surgery at Women's Hospital here in Vancouver, which again was like just a remarkable thing in itself. I thought to know that the chief of surgery was interested in my case, but also I was going to have that expertise. And after meeting with him, he said, of course you can go see Dr. March in LA, and there's all these risks. And I have not performed this exact surgery that Dr. March is recommending. He's obviously experienced enough. And actually in that moment, what he proposed was doing something more experimental before and trying that. And in the moment, if it didn't work, then opening me up and doing an abdominal surgery. So in that moment, meeting with him, my husband and I were obviously very intrigued, but again, having like out of body experience of like,
yeah,
oh my God, what is happening? I am now becoming like this case study.
Right. Like this experiment. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And basically what they wanted to do and they ended up doing was using the same technology that they use now instead of doing open heart surgery. So not having to actually open your heart up, but they use this camera that can like go through bone essentially. So using the same technology going through my cervix and knowing that this can move, this technology can even go through bone, they felt very confident that it could navigate through this cement-like scar tissue in my uterus and give them a picture to be able to remove the scar tissue that way without having to open me up abdominally.
Wow. Okay.
I know it's a very long story.
No, it's so
but
cool.
This is like the journey I was on. again, these were the real conversations my husband and I were having at night when my son would go to bed of like, do we go to LA and have Dr. March do it? Do we have the chief of surgery do it? We had, I was conducting conference calls between the chief of surgery, Dr. March in California, and my fertility doctor. And I literally felt like I had a full-time job.
A full-time career. Yeah. Another job.
I was going for MRIs because they knew my uterus was tilted, but they really wanted to understand like at what degree. So it was, months and weeks of all of these conversations. And ultimately, my husband and I decided to work with the chief of surgery. And I would say like also through all of this, because I felt like I had such little control, like of what was going on with my life, I feel like what I came to the realization is like, what could I control? And that was like my mental, my spiritual, my physical well-being. So while all of this was happening, I was working out with a trainer. I was going to acupuncture. I have a life coach that Jenna Hills just was like amazing for me. Every month I would talk to her. I was seeing an energetic or energy healer, which, I mean, for some people, it might have been a little out there, but that included a lot of burning of sage and waving crystals.
I'm down with that. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Like I did it
into that.
all. Oh, yeah. And prayed to God, my angels. I like everything I could do to make myself mentally and healthy and physically healthy and in preparation for another surgery was really the most important for me. So I felt like I was kind of training, like when we were leading up to this second surgery with the chief of surgery, and which I didn't know really how it was going to go. They were going to make a call in the moment, basically try this new technology. And in the moment, if it didn't work, they were going to open me up. So I was going to wake up kind of being like, how did it go?
What happened?
What happened? Like, did I have abdominal surgery? So I just felt like I was like training for the Olympics. Like I was like, okay, I'm training for this surgery. Like I got to be ready. And the night before, I remember I made this like list of people in my life that have had like a positive influence or just like they have really meaningful, they've had a really meaningful impact in my life. And some of them on the list didn't even know that I was going through this. And some of them did. And then my energy healer had given me this crystal, this angel. And I was like, I'm bringing this list of people so they can be there with me in that surgery room and this angel. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it because they probably won't let me bring it in, but I'm going to do it. And so the nurse, as she was getting me ready to go in for surgery, I looked at her and I said, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I need to bring this list of people in the room with me. And I need to bring this angel. Yeah. And she looked at me and it was like, she didn't think I was crazy. And she took out this roll of tape and I was like, what is she doing? And she put the angel in the palm of my hand with the list of people and she taped it around my hand.
Oh, so I just got the full body chills. Oh,
yeah. And, I had that. And the next thing I remember is I woke up and I opened my hand and the angel was still there and the list of people. And the doctor came over to me and he said, it was successful. We didn't have to open you up and we removed the scar tissue.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
They thought it would take about 45 minutes to an hour. And I remember waking up and looking at the clock and it had been 3 hours since I fell asleep and went into the surgery room. So I was relieved it went well. And then right away I was like, oh my God, why did that take 3 hours? And of course there were complications during it. It was a lot more challenging and it was a new way. And at the end of the day, it was successful, but it was, it was a big team effort, that's for sure. And so I felt like, my husband and I had like conquered it. We were like on cloud nine. He, I like when he came in and saw me, we both were crying and just like, we had just prayed so hard for this outcome of not only it being successful, but also not having to do abdominal surgery, because that's a lot more serious. The recovery is huge. And so I left, with a lot of medication and hormones to take to make sure my uterus would heal, and was told, you should start to menstruate again. And, I had a follow-up after I needed to go through one cycle. And so I menstruated. It was like, honestly, I felt like I was a 12-year-old girl again. Like I was just so, like, keep in mind, I hadn't menstruated in like a year and a half.
Wow. Yeah.
Like longer really, because I got pregnant. So it was like 2 years. And I just remember being like, oh my God, I'm me again. Like,
yes. Yeah.
I'm like, my body is working. I am a female. Like, I just felt like all these things. It was just, I was so happy. And so I had my follow-up like a month later, and they went to do a hysteroscopy again. So basically go in with a camera and make sure everything was clear. And in that follow-up, I received devastating news that a lot of the scar tissue was removed, however, not all of it. And they were still having issues getting into my uterus. And I just remember laying there being like, fuck, like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, and so again, they were like, okay, well, we're going to have to look at possibly doing another surgery. And I feel like I blacked out. I don't even remember. It was just like, at that point I was like, I can't believe we're having to go through this again. And so I had another follow-up, and I ended up going into a third procedure or surgery with the chief of surgery, where I was sedated this time. He went in, he did confirm that a lot of it was removed, and that surgery was successful. However, there was still some remaining scar tissue. So he had removed it. And again, he had shared, the complication of how your uterus is just making this so much harder. And then I remember he showed me the screen, and he's like, look, like, it's all gone. He's like, I could drop 5 embryos in here if I wanted. And I thought, like, okay, that's a little far here. Like, we're not going to do that. But again, it was like, another sign of like, okay, it took 3 surgeries, but here we are. And so after that, what we were told is like, absolutely, you can try naturally. And like, your uterus, unfortunately, it's never going to be the same. Like, yes, there's scar tissue removed. Now you're menstruating, like, sperm is able to get there. And how easily, there's always going to be these, like, I don't know how they said it, like bumps and bruises, and it's never going to be the same. So IVF is most probable as like a next step. And at this point, like, IVF was good news to me. I mean, like, up until now, I didn't even have IVF as an option. Like, nothing could get into my uterus. So I was like, who cares? IVF, like, let's do it. Like,
that's child's play.
I was like, that's the best news I've heard.
Yeah.
And so our next follow-up was to talk about IVF. And because of the complications I had with my uterus and the scar tissue and the way it was tilted, they wanted to do what's called like a mock embryo transfer.
Oh, wow.
So basically, they wanted to like do the whole step, but it not be an actual embryo, just to like mock it so that they could make sure they can get in through the pathway that they did clear with scar tissue. But although it was still not perfect before we went through the whole process of IVF. So we went to see our fertility specialist, Dr. Usby, for that mock embryo transfer. I remember being just like, I was like excited to get going on IVF. It was just like, oh, finally we're here,
Right. It's and like a step in the right direction.
I felt like every week it'd be like, I take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. And it was like this roller coaster. And I felt responsible. I was bringing these like, close friends and family along with me on this roller coaster. And I mean, what was just so amazing is the friends and my sister that supported me through all of it. Like, not once did any of them ever say like, hey, like, maybe you should consider a different path, or maybe like this isn't meant to be. Like, they just continued to be my champion, and they like held this like vision and outcome that I had, that I was like relentless around in achieving. And that's all they wanted for me. And I'm just so grateful for that, because it was like a roller coaster. I mean, it was highs and like low lows. We went in for this mock embryo transfer, and it's funny, it was right before it. It's standard procedure, obviously, to do a pregnancy test. And so, they were like, should we do a pregnancy test? And we were kind of, even the nurse, I was like, haha, like, okay, that would be funny. I mean, I did have the surgery, so I guess there was a very small chance, like I could be pregnant, but in my head, I've been infertile for like 2 years. So I was like, okay, let's do the pregnancy test. And we did it, and it was negative. And so we were like, okay, I went into the room to do the mock embryo transfer, and Dr. Usby went to do it, and he couldn't get into my uterus.
Oof.
And I just was laying there, and I looked over to my husband. I was like, oh, is this honestly happening? Or am I awake? Is this real life right now?
Yeah.
Like, I've just had 3 surgeries, and he can't get into my uterus, but I've just been told there's no scar tissue. Like, what is going on? And Dr. Usby is like one of the best like doctors there is. He's the founder of all of fertility in Vancouver. Like, and in the moment, like, I'm sure he meant to make me feel better. He's like, he's been doing this for 50 some years. Like, that's how old he is and experienced. And he's like, there's only been one other person where I haven't been able to get into their uterus. And I'm like, I don't know if this is to make me feel better or worse. You're
like, that's not a statistic
I'm like, okay. And that was it. It was just like, we can't get into your uterus. I don't know what's going on. We got to go back and meet with the chief of surgery. We're pretty sure it's not the scar tissue, but is it now the angle? Do we have to operate to change the angle of your uterus? Like, there were just things happening in that room that I was like, I can't, like, it was my breaking point. Like, I was like, I got dressed. I don't even think I said one word to my husband. And we walked through the lobby, and he looked at me and he's like, it's going to be okay. And I honestly, I lost my shit. We had like a full throwdown in the lobby. It was like our breaking point. And I just like cried, and I looked at him and I was like, I quit. I'm done. And he was like, you can't quit. And I'm like, I quit. Like, I can't have one more exam. I can't have one more person stick something at me. I can't have one more surgery. Like, this is it. Like, we're not meant to have another child. Like, we can't even do IVF. Like, and like, I'm sure everyone was staring at us, but I didn't even care. I was just like, I'm done. And he was like, well, what do we live for if we're not living for our children? And I remember looking at him and being like, we're going to have to find something else to live for. Like, I'm done. I can't keep doing this. Like, this is 2 years. So I got in my car. I went to work. He left, I went to work. I know, I'm crazy. I went to work because I was just like, I cried to my boss. Thank God. My boss is like the most amazing person and has been so supportive through this entire journey. I couldn't have done it without her. And I felt like we were at the end of the road, and we had another conference call again. And the chief of surgery he was like, I know it's because of the angle. The scar tissue is gone. Like, let me get in there. I will do a mock embryo transfer. I know like the ins and outs of her uterus now. And it's because of how angled it is. And I just thought, like, this is so insane. Like, I have the chief of surgery that's now going to have to do a mock embryo transfer because of my uterus. And it just was like beyond. And I had a scheduled appointment with him 2 weeks later. He was going on vacation to do another try at the mock embryo transfer. I had like hit rock bottom. And then I was expecting to menstruate as I was, newly tracking what this was, my menstrual cycle. And I didn't get my period. And I lost it because my first thought was, fuck, all the scar tissue has grown back.
Yeah.
It's like, because they've said that like the risk is scar tissue can and always grow back. So I was sobbing to my husband being like, oh my God, I'm not getting my period. The scar tissue's back. We are literally back at square one. And he just looked at me and he was like, go take a pregnancy test. And I was so pissed at him. I was like, that's so insensitive for you to say. Like, I'm not pregnant. Like, there's no way there's a way, like, I guess a very small, but like, I'm not pregnant. This is crazy. I just took a pregnancy test before we tried to do the mock embryo transfer like 2 days ago. I'm not pregnant. And he was like, you're pregnant. There's no way that scar tissue is back. And I was like, just because I was so annoyed with him, I went into the bathroom. I stormed in the bathroom, found an old pregnancy test, took it out, and I was like, fine, I'll take one.
You like blow the dust off the box.
I was like, yeah. I'm like, is this thing even like, is it expired? Like, who knows? I haven't had to take a pregnancy test in 2 years.
Right.
So I found one and I was so mad at him while I was peeing on this stick. And I put it down and all of a sudden it said pregnant.
Stop. This is like a movie. Come on now.
I know. This is my life. Like, I'm not kidding you. This is how it happened.
Gosh.
And I was like, what? Like, I was so confused.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, and all of this stress, like, to be honest, like, I mean, we had like sex twice in the last, I don't even, like, there's just been, it hasn't been very romantic lately, like, let me tell you. And like, I'm just like, what is, like, I was like, this is crazy. I'm like, it's got to be expired. This isn't even right. So I was like, you need to go get me like 6 more pregnancy tests. Like, this isn't right. Anyways, they were like all positive, and I called my doctor in the morning and I was like, you're not going to believe this. And he was like, throw it at me. He's like, your case, like, I'll take whatever. Your case is so crazy. I'm like, I think I'm pregnant. And he was like, what? He's like, I'm like, yeah, I just took a pregnancy test and it says I'm pregnant. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, like, thank God he couldn't get into my uterus 3 days ago. Like, all these things in my head. And I'm like, did we do any damage? Because he was like poking around there. And he was like, you need to come in right away. Like, I don't even think he believed me. He's like, we need to do the blood work, all of this. Anyways, we do it. He calls me right away and he's like, you're pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. Like, and he just like, he kind of laughed, like, and like, we both kind of laughed and cried. And he's like, well, what do I know? I've only been doing this for 55 years. And I was just like, he's like, I can't even believe this right now. And I was like, well, I don't understand. Like, I took the pregnancy test before we did the mock embryo transfer. He's like, it must have like not even implanted yet, or like it wasn't enough to show up. And like, it was God like intervening that I couldn't get into your uterus, because we would have done damage.
Wow.
Yeah. And I am now 15 weeks pregnant. It's insane. The percentage of chances of me being able to get pregnant naturally were so slim. And then like IVF was going to be the thing that was our most hopeful thing. But then we didn't even know if IVF was going to be possible with the shape of my uterus, to then find out that I was like, it was just I think I'm still in shock, honestly.
So how did they explain it? It was just like against the odds. It was just,
yeah, it was like literally against the odds. Like it's the true, I used to like hate it when some people would like kind of hear or know that I was going through infertility, like going through issues in the last couple of years. And they'd be like, miracle babies happen all the time. And I would just be like, shut up. Like, you don't even know. Like,
right.
like I'm dealing with a chief of surgery, a doctor in LA, a doctor in Vancouver. Like,
right.
I'm not going to have a miracle baby. Like,
yeah.
And yeah, it's like I'm having a miracle baby, but in some way, I also feel like it's not a miracle because there was so much work and study and plan and preparation and 3 surgeries. Like there was so much that led up to this.
Right.
So it's also like, sometimes I don't want to say like it's a miracle, because sometimes I feel like it's just like chance and lucky. And I had like the most amazing team that was so committed to me getting here, and a support network that I don't want to undermine all of that and what's happened over the last 2 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I don't think that undermines it at all. I truly do think that there is some luck and magic that has to do with it sometimes too. And that seems like that, that plays a role. It just does. There's no other way to explain it, which is cool.
I mean, I believe in magic. Spiritually over the last 2 years, I have grown so much. My husband, I carry that list of people and that little angel, like after that, like it came in every single appointment. I mean, to the point where my husband knew, like he'd check, like, do you have it with you?
Yeah.
Because I didn't go into any appointment, any procedure or surgery without it.
So you're feeling good?
Yeah, I mean, I have felt really sick and awful, to tell you the truth. But yeah, I'm still in shock, and I'm so excited, and I feel so grateful. And I'd also be lying to say, like, I also have a lot of fear.
Sure.
I feel like it was like I found out I was pregnant, and then it was like, okay, well, we can't get too excited because now we got to make sure your hormones go up a certain amount every week. And then I was like, okay, once we see that, then I'll feel comfortable. And then it was like, okay, well, once we do this ultrasound and hear the heartbeat, I mean, that whole heartbeat thing was a whole situation for me again, right? I was like so traumatized from the last time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I am considered a risky pregnancy for sure, in that I did get pregnant quite close to like the last apparent, I guess, procedure surgery. So my uterus maybe wasn't or wouldn't have been fully healed. So I most of the time stay really positive and optimistic, and have started to share, and I told people at work and that I'm pregnant, and it's becoming really real. But I think after going through what I have gone through, there's definitely fear around it. And with the ups and downs of everything,
right.
I think that was my hesitation. I was like, I want to share my story, because any story that I could grab onto while I was going through this was so important to keep me motivated, inspired, and keep me going. And I really knew that I wanted to do that for other people. And part of me was like, well, maybe I'll just do it after I have the baby and I'm feeling confident and with a certain outcome. And so, like, yes, I'm pregnant and it's a miracle. And I know not everyone gets here to this point, but it's still uncomfortable and uneasy for me because I still haven't completed this chapter,
Right. Yeah.
But I hope that, if anything, I can just inspire people to keep going, in every setback. Like, I know it takes so much, but to like get your group of people and be an advocate for yourself and formulate that team of doctors that is as committed as you are to a certain outcome, and not to give up for a second.
Yes. It's so inspiring to see that you just continue to fight and continue to advocate and continue to wish this, dream this dream that you had. And I know it's still kind of scary. You're not through yet. And I so appreciate you talking to me in the midst of it still and talking to all the listeners, because I really do think you're going to help so many people. Can we do like another mini-sode after you have the baby and you can give us on how everything's going? Okay, that would be awesome.
Yeah. We're not finding out what it is, which is no, it's crazy for me because I would love to know, but my husband really wants it to be a surprise.
You're such a strong person. I'm so glad I met you. I'm so thankful to our mutual friend who introduced us, because this has been an amazing story. And it just gives me such hope, and it makes me so happy and proud to be a woman. Women are so strong.
Oh,
it's so
strong.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I truly appreciate it. And I will talk to you soon.
I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Leah. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening today, guys. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed Leah's story. If you're into this, don't forget to please subscribe and rate and review and pass it around to your friends. And I will talk to you next time. Bye.